So the Interact project is funded by the European Commission. It's a Marie Curie funded project, and it stands for the International Network in Crisis Translation, which focuses on translation in crisis settings, looking at policy, training, technologies, and the ethical questions around that particular topic. Personally, I'm very interested in the technologies related to translation, and we could see that when increasing disasters around the world, that translation technology was being used. So that research then spurred an interest in developing an international network to look at various aspects of research around crisis translation. And the Marie Curie RISE mechanism was one of the best ways of starting to look at that. So it's like seed funding that allows you to establish a cross-disciplinary network. So in the writing process, I had to identify formal stakeholders who might be interested in collaborating with us. And one of the obvious choices there was Translators Without Borders, whose main goal is to provide information in translated format to those who are engaged or suffering from humanitarian or other kinds of disasters. We also have in the project a small to medium-sized enterprise called Unbabel, who are based in Lisbon and who are experts in translation technology, and an organisation called Cochrane, whose main objective is to provide health evidence online for medical experts, but also for the lay public. So a scenario in which the research could have helped is more like a small-scale emergency, but it had global coverage recently. And that was the case of the wild boar soccer team in the cave in Thailand. They needed international cave rescuers to go in there and rescue those boys. And one of the crucial aspects was one of the boys spoke English, and only one of those boys. Now that facilitated communication, obviously, between the international rescuers and the young boys who were in the cave. Without that common language, how could they have really been successful in the maneuver, because it was very, very complex and very detailed. And then another example would be something that would be way more well known by people, I suppose, is like an earthquake. Take again the example of New Zealand, the Canterbury earthquakes that happened quite recently. We had the opportunity to work with the New Zealand Red Cross. But what they discovered was that their new immigrant populations who didn't necessarily speak English were not so well prepared for that. So they decided they had to translate their earthquake readiness guide, and they were undertaking that project when we were there. So we got in touch with them, we told them what we were trying to do, including providing new course material for linguistic volunteers. And then we created more content. We refined it, and they took the course, they evaluated it for us, and then they applied that in the translation of their earthquake readiness guides within their communities. So what we're doing is we're rolling that out to different stakeholders, getting evaluations from them, refining it, rolling it out again, evaluating it, refining it. And this is what we will continue to do until the end of the project. And then in parallel, we're also creating course content that is more geared towards the academic side of the world. So many people in the project are already training student translators, whether that be at undergraduate or postgraduate level. And the point there is to address people who are already aware of translation and interpreting. So they're studying this, they know how to translate and interpret, but to help guide them about what their roles could be in a disaster setting, both in terms of response to a disaster, but more importantly from our point of view, in terms of preparation for a disaster or an emergency. So we believe that by enabling preparation, you have a much better chance of success in terms of communication and outcomes during a disaster.